Don't make me take you down, guy.
You can't take me down.
I'm bigger than you are.
Yeah, make your move, big guy.
You first.
You can't make this up. Two grown men dressing as women just to afford an apartment. This wild idea launched the career of a global superstar. We're jumping right into the craziest sitcom ideas that somehow made it to TV. And wait until you hear about the show that featured a secret robot child that creeped everyone out. 1. Gimme a Break.
It's awful hard for Nell to stick to her diet when you're stuffing your face like that.
I'm not stuffing my face.
That's right. He's eating for two, in case he gets pregnant.
Many people remember the catchy theme song, but what they often forget is the show's surprisingly sad beginning. Gimme a Break, centered on Nell Harper, a talented singer played by the powerhouse performer Nell Carter. The setup is that Nell's longtime friend, the police chief of a fictional California town, passes away from an illness. Before he goes, he makes Nell promise to look after his 3 daughters. So Nell moves into the family home as their new housekeeper and mother figure. You see, the show was really about building a new, unconventional family from a place of loss. Nell Carter was the heart and soul of the show. What many overlooked is that she was a Tony Award-winning Broadway star, and the show often gave her chances to show off her incredible singing voice. To put it mildly, she could blow the roof off the place. The show ran for 6 seasons, and over time the cast changed quite a bit. The storylines got pretty wild, too. In the final season, the setting moved from California to New York City, and Nell ended up taking care of her own aging father. It was a sweet show built on a serious foundation, proving that family isn't just about who you're related to. It was a show about a found family. But our next show was about a family that was already made, just one that had been separated for years, leading to a culture shock of epic proportions. 2. Silver Spoons.
I'm your son.
Son?
If you were a kid in the 80s, you dreamed of being Ricky Stratton. Silver Spoons was the ultimate wish fulfillment fantasy. The show was about a young boy named Ricky, played by Ricky Schroeder, who finds out his father is a millionaire. Not just any millionaire, but a cool, fun-loving guy named Edward Stratton III, who lives in a mansion that is basically a giant toy store. You see, Edward is a child at heart, having inherited his family's toy company. His house had a real, rideable train that went through the rooms, classic arcade games, and every cool gadget a kid could ever want. The whole point of the show was the clash between the super-rich, fun-loving dad and his more serious, down-to-earth son. Ricky had grown up in a normal home with his mom, so moving into this world of extreme wealth was a big change. Many people are crazy about this show because it launched the careers of several young actors. A very young Jason Bateman played Ricky's troublemaking friend Derek, and a teenage Alfonso Ribeiro, who would later become Carlton on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, played Ricky's other best friend. What many overlooked is that the show, despite its silly premise, often tried to teach good lessons about not letting money change, who you are. Ricky moved in with a dad he never knew. But what if 2 brothers were taken in by a rich man who wasn't their father at all? Our next show explored that very idea, and it became a cultural sensation. 3. Different Strokes.
Did you just hear what I heard? Her kids are in school in other countries, and she likes it that way.
Yeah, and we're in a lot of trouble.
What you talking about, Willis?
What you talking about, Willis? If you know that line, you definitely remember Different Strokes. This show was a ratings giant and a cultural phenomenon. It told the story of 2 young African-American brothers from Harlem, Arnold and Willis Jackson, who are taken in by a rich white widower named Philip Drummond after their mother, his housekeeper, passes away. They move into his Park Avenue penthouse with his daughter Kimberly. The comedy came from the culture clash with Arnold and Willis adjusting to their new fancy life. The show was famous for its very special episodes. While it was a comedy, it wasn't afraid to tackle some very serious topics like bullying and peer pressure. These episodes were a big deal back then and sparked a lot of conversations in homes across America. The thing nobody tells you is just how popular this show was. It was consistently in the top 20 for ratings and made its young stars, Gary Coleman and Todd Bridges, household names. It was a show that tried to be more than just funny. It tried to teach lessons about family, acceptance, and love. Its legacy is complicated, but there's no denying the impact it had on 80s television. Different Strokes was so popular, it even created a spin-off. This new show took a minor character and built a whole new world around her, creating another long-running hit. 4. The Facts of Life.
Would you like to help me feed my friend Claude?
Sure, okay. Good. Maybe you can help me find his mouth.
Taking a page from its parent show, Different Strokes. The Facts of Life started with a simple idea. The Drummonds' housekeeper, Mrs. Edna Garrett, leaves her job in New York City to become the house mother at an all-girls boarding school called Eastland. The first season featured a huge cast of young actresses, including a very young Molly Ringwald, who would go on to become a massive movie star. But not all things are what they seem. After that first season, the producers decided the cast was too big and made a huge change. They cut most of the girls from the show, keeping only 4: the beautiful and popular Blair, the sharp-tongued Joe, the funny and bubbly Tootie, and the sweet, innocent Natalie. This core group, along with Mrs. Garrett, became the heart of the show for 9 seasons. To put it mildly, the show was a massive success, especially with younger audiences. It followed the girls from their high school days all the way into adulthood. What many overlooked is that in the later seasons, a young, unknown actor named George Clooney joined the cast as a handyman. The show was a launching pad for future stars and a comforting, funny series that explored the ups and downs of growing up. It proved that a spin-off could be just as successful, if not more so, than the show it came from. The Facts of Life was about a group of women making a life together. Our next show took a similar idea, but gave it a more modern, adult twist, becoming a quiet hit in the mid-80s. 5. Kate and Allie.
Do you want to get married again?
Someday.
Wasn't a question, it was a proposal.
In the 1980s, the idea of a modern family was still a new concept for television. Kate and Allie was ahead of its time. The show centered on 2 best friends from childhood, Kate McCardle and Allie Lowell. Both are recently divorced and decide to move into a Greenwich Village apartment together to save money and raise their children under one roof. Kate was a working mom, while Allie was a more traditional homemaker. Their different personalities and parenting styles were the source of much of the show's humor and heart. The show was a big hit for CBS and was praised for its realistic portrayal of friendship and single motherhood. The chemistry between the 2 lead actresses, Susan St. James and Jane Curtin, was fantastic. They were both already big stars from shows like Macmillan and Wife and Saturday Night Live, and their comedic timing was perfect. The thing nobody tells you is that the show was filmed in New York City, which gave it a unique, authentic feel that was different from the many sitcoms filmed on Hollywood backlots. It was a smart, warm, and funny show that celebrated the idea that your best friend can be your family. Kate and Allie created their own family out of friendship, but our next show featured a family that was, to put it mildly, a little less functional and a lot more chaotic. 6. Mama's Family.
Let's just move him back the number of spaces that I moved him forward.
She's right. How many spaces did you move it?
Well, how the hell should I know?
This is a show with a truly bizarre history. Mama's Family was actually born from a series of comedy sketches called The Family on the Carol Burnett Show. The sketches were so popular that they decided to spin them off into a full-fledged sitcom. The show centered on Thelma Harper, also known as Mama, a sharp-tongued, grumpy, and hilarious old woman living in the fictional town of Raytown. The main actress, Vicki Lawrence, was a comedic genius. Here's the kicker. She was only in her mid-30s when she started playing the elderly Mama, a character decades older than herself. She was so convincing that many viewers had no idea how young she really was. The show had a wild run. It first aired on the NBC network for 2 seasons before it was canceled, but that wasn't the end. A couple of years later, it was brought back in what's called first-run syndication, where it was sold directly to local TV stations. It became a huge hit in syndication and ran for 4 more seasons. The cast changed a bit between the network and syndication runs, but the core of the show remained the same. Mama getting into arguments and crazy situations with her dysfunctional family, including her dim-witted son Vint and her nosy neighbor Iola Boylan. It was pure, silly, southern fried comedy. Mama was the grumpy but lovable center of her home. Our next show also featured a unique character who came to run a household, but he was a lot more proper and a whole lot more British. 7. Mr. Belvedere.
AIDS thing you told us about. Do you know what that is?
Sure. I mean, it's real bad, and you get in real bad trouble if you get caught with it. Sort of like shoplifting.
In the 80s, there was a strange trend of sitcoms about butlers. One of the most memorable was Mr. Belvedere. The show was about a proper, highly educated, and witty English butler named Lynn Belvedere, who takes a job as a live-in housekeeper for a chaotic American family, the Owenses, in a suburb of Pittsburgh. The father, George, was a sports writer, and the mother, Marcia, was studying to be a lawyer. They had 3 kids, including the youngest, Wesley, who was always getting into trouble and having a battle of wits with Mr. Belvedere. What made the show unique was its ending. At the close of every episode, Mr. Belvedere would write in his diary, reflecting on the lesson he or the family had learned that day. It was a sweet and clever way to wrap up the story. The thing nobody tells you is that the show was actually based on a series of books from the 1940s, and there had even been a few movies made about the character decades earlier. The show's theme song, According to Our New Arrival, was sung by the quirky jazz singer Leon Redbone, giving it a classy, old-timey feel that set it apart from other sitcoms of the era. Mr. Belvedere was a fish out of water from another country. Our next show took that idea and doubled it, creating one of the most beloved and silliest buddy comedies of all time. 8. Perfect Strangers.
The dance of joy is over.
Hey, we're having a good time. Dance.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Get ready to do the dance of joy. Perfect Strangers was a classic buddy comedy with a goofy, lovable heart. The show followed the lives of 2 cousins who couldn't be more different. Larry Appleton was a high-strung, aspiring photographer from a big family in Wisconsin. His life is turned upside down when his long-lost cousin, Balki Bartokomous, suddenly arrives from a fictional Greek-like island called Mypos. Balki is a naive, optimistic sheep herder who knows almost nothing about America. He moves in with Larry, and as Balki would say, well, of course not. Don't be ridiculous. Their misadventures trying to navigate life in Chicago were hilarious. The show was famous for its physical comedy. Bronson Pinchot, who played Balki, and Mark Lynn Baker, who played Larry, were masters of slapstick. The thing nobody tells you is that Perfect Strangers was part of a hugely successful Friday night block of programming on ABC called TGIF. It was a powerhouse lineup of family-friendly comedies. And here's a wow factor for you. Perfect Strangers became so popular that it spawned its own spin-off, a little show you might have heard of called Family Matters. The character of Harriet Winslow was originally the elevator operator in Larry and Balki's apartment building. From a successful show that launched a spin-off, we moved directly to that spin-off, a show that was completely taken over by its nerdy next-door neighbor. 9. Family Matters.
Why do
a Steve Urkel dance, all you have to do is hitch up your pants, bend your knees and stick out your pelvis. I'm telling you, baby, it's better than Elvis.
It's hard to believe, but Family Matters started out as a very normal family sitcom. It was centered on the Winslow family, a middle-class African-American family living in Chicago. You had police officer Carl, his wife Harriet, and their 3 kids. The show was meant to be a heartwarming comedy about everyday family life. But then, midway through the first season, a new character showed up for what was supposed to be a one-time guest appearance. That character was their nerdy, clumsy, suspender-wearing neighbor, Steve Urkel. To put it mildly, audiences went crazy for Urkel. His high-pitched voice, his snorting laugh, and his classic catchphrase, "Did I do that?" made him an instant star. He was so popular that the producers rewrote the entire show to make him the main character. The stories started to revolve around Urkel and his unrequited love for Laura Winslow. The plots got more and more bizarre, involving inventions like a transformation chamber that could turn Urkel into his cool alter ego, Stefan Urquelle. What many overlooked is that the show ran for an incredible 9 seasons and 215 episodes, making it one of the longest-running sitcoms of its time, all thanks to a character who was never meant to be a star. Urkel was the ultimate TV nerd. But our next show featured a different kind of 80s icon, the cool, troublemaking teen heartthrob who was always getting into trouble. 10. Growing Pains.
No, I was raised Presbyterian.
That's a boat race.
Well, looking at you makes my heart race.
If you want a perfect time capsule of mid-80s family life, look no further than Growing Pains. The show was about the Seaver family who lived on Long Island, New York. The dad, Jason, was a psychiatrist who worked from home, and the mom, Maggie, had just gone back to work as a reporter. This role reversal was a pretty modern idea for the time. They had 3 kids, the brainy Carol, the goofy Ben, and the oldest son, Mike, who was the classic charming troublemaker. Mike Seaver, played by Kirk Cameron, became a massive teen idol. His face was on the cover of every teen magazine. But the thing nobody tells you is that the show became a launching pad for another future superstar. In the show's final season, a homeless teenager named Luke Brower comes to live with the Seavers. That young actor was none other than a fresh-faced Leonardo DiCaprio, years before he would become one of the biggest movie stars in the world. It's wild to go back and watch his early work on this classic family sitcom. The show was a perfect blend of humor and heartfelt lessons about growing up. Growing Pains featured a dad working from home, which was unusual. Our next show also flipped traditional gender roles, asking a question that became its title and a pop culture catchphrase. 11. Who's the Boss?
And sometimes I love to take bubble baths.
Really?
Yeah.
You in a bubble bath? Oh, I always pictured you in the shower. I mean...
The premise of Who's the Boss was a classic role reversal comedy. Tony Michelli, a tough but kind former baseball player from Brooklyn, decides to leave the city to give his daughter, Samantha, a better life. He takes a job as a live-in housekeeper for a rich, divorced advertising executive named Angela Bauer in upscale Connecticut. So you have a street-smart guy working for a high-powered, sophisticated woman. The comedy came from their clashing lifestyles, backgrounds, and parenting styles. The show was a rating smash for 8 seasons. A huge part of its appeal was the slow burn, will they or won't they romance between Tony and Angela. Audiences tuned in every week to see if they would finally get together. The cast was amazing, including the sassy and hilarious Mona, who was Angela's mom, and a very young Alyssa Milano, who played Tony's daughter, Sam. What many overlooked is that the show was almost called something else entirely. Some of the other titles they considered were You're the Boss and The Upper Hand. But they landed on Who's the Boss, and it became one of the defining sitcoms of the 80s. Tony took a strange job to make a better life. But the characters in our next show took on an even stranger gig, a decision that launched the career of one of the most beloved actors of all time. 12. Bosom Buddies.
You talking to me? You talking to me? I don't see anybody else here. You must be talking to me.
I'm talking to you, mister.
The idea behind Bosom Buddies sounds completely crazy on paper. Two young guys working in advertising get their apartment building demolished. The only affordable place they can find to live is in an apartment building for women. So what do? They dress up as women and pretend to be Buffy and Hildegard to get a room. This wild premise was the setup for a show that has since become a cult classic for one very big reason. One of those two young guys was a completely unknown actor named Tom Hanks. The show was really a showcase for the incredible comedic chemistry between Tom Hanks and his co-star Peter Scolari. Their fast-talking, improvisational style was amazing to watch. The show only lasted for 2 seasons and was never a huge ratings hit. But not all things are what they seem. As Tom Hanks became a 2-time Oscar winner and a global superstar, people went back and discovered this early, silly show. The thing nobody tells you is that in the second season, the writers had the characters reveal their secret. From then on, their friends and neighbors knew they were men, but they still had to dress as women around the hotel manager. It was a weird show, but it gave the world Tom Hanks. Bosom Buddies was about living in close quarters. Our next show took that idea to the extreme, putting a dad and his 2 grown-up daughters in a situation that was, as the title suggests, a little too close for comfort. 13. Too close for comfort.
Nunzio's Pizza? Well, that's worth waiting for.
Should we ask Monroe to join us?
Are you out of your mind?
Ted Knight was a television legend, famous for playing the goofy news anchor Ted Baxter on The Mary Tyler Moore Show. In Too Close for Comfort, he played a completely different kind of character. He was Henry Rush, a kind but overprotective cartoonist who creates a popular comic strip called Cosmic Cow. The show's premise kicks in when Henry and his wife Muriel have to deal with their 2 adult daughters moving into the empty apartment downstairs in their San Francisco duplex. This was, for Henry, way too close for comfort. He was constantly worried about his daughters and getting involved in their lives. The show was a solid hit, but here's where the story gets interesting. After 2 seasons, the ABC network canceled it. Usually, that would be the end. But the show was popular enough that its production company decided to keep making new episodes and sell them directly to local stations in syndication. This was a very unusual move at the time. The show continued for several more seasons in syndication, even changing its name to The Ted Knight Show in its final season. It proved that a show could find a second life outside of the major networks, a model that would become more common years later. This show found a second life after being canceled. Our next show had a similar story, getting canceled by one network only to be saved and brought back years later with a new name. 14. It's a Living.
Now, girls, I've noticed that lately a few of you have been putting on a little weight.
Perhaps if you'd let us wear clothes instead of a rubber band, you might not notice it.
What do you get when you put a group of funny, wisecracking waitresses together in a fancy restaurant at the top of a skyscraper? You get the sitcom It's a Living. The show was set in the above-the-top restaurant in Los Angeles and followed the lives of the waitstaff as they dealt with their quirky customers and their own personal problems. The cast was a fantastic ensemble of talented comedic actresses, including Ann Gillian and Barry Youngfellow. The group dynamics and the snappy dialogue were the heart of the show. Here is where the story gets wild. The show aired on ABC for 2 seasons from 1980 to 1982, where it did okay but was ultimately canceled. That seemed to be the end of it. But then, 3 years later, the show was revived for first-run syndication. What's even crazier is that most of the original cast returned. The revived show was a big success in syndication and ran for 4 more seasons, producing way more episodes in its second life than it did in its first. To put it mildly, it's one of the most successful comeback stories in TV history. They even changed the name slightly to Making a Living for a while. The women of It's a Living worked in a fancy place, but our next show featured a character who worked in an even fancier place, a governor's mansion, and his story was a spin-off from one of the most controversial sitcoms ever made. 15. Benson.
You are tracking up the governor's mansion and it is disgusting.
Fine, I'll walk on my hands.
Many people remember Benson, the show about the sharp, witty butler who worked for the scatterbrained Governor Gatling. But what many have forgotten is where the character of Benson Dubois came from. He was originally a supporting character on the wild and controversial sitcom Soap, a show that made fun of soap operas. On that show, Benson was the sarcastic butler for the wealthy Tate family. He was so popular that he got his own spin-off. In Benson, the main character leaves his old job to become the head of household affairs for the widowed Governor Eugene Gatling and his young daughter Katie. The show was a huge hit and ran for 7 seasons. The amazing thing about Benson is the journey the main character went on. He started as the governor's butler, but over the years, he got more and more involved in politics. He was promoted to state budget director, then he became the lieutenant governor. In the show's final episode, he was running for governor himself against his old boss. It was an incredible character arc, taking a character from a supporting butler to a major political player. It's a journey unlike any other in sitcom history. Benson was a hugely successful spin-off. Our next show was also a spin-off of a massive hit, but its legacy is very, very different. In fact, it's famous for being one of the biggest flops in TV history. 16. Hello, Larry.
Pop, what is this?
It's a piano. Don't you know anything about music?
I know it's a piano.
And why bother to ask?
Sometimes a show becomes famous, not for being good, but for being a punchline. That's the story of Hello, Larry. The show was a spin-off of the mega-hit Different Strokes. The main character, Larry Alder, was a talk show host who had appeared on Different Strokes as a prospective buyer of the Drummonds' penthouse. In his own show, Larry moves to Portland, Oregon, with his 2 teenage daughters to host a radio call-in show. The show was supposed to be a heartwarming comedy about a single dad raising his kids. Unfortunately, it just didn't work. The show was not popular with critics or audiences. To put it mildly, it was a ratings disaster. The thing that made it legendary was its connection to late-night TV. The host of The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson, started making jokes about Hello, Larry in his opening monologues. He would joke about how bad it was and how it was always on the verge of being canceled. This turned the show into a national joke. They even tried to boost ratings by having characters from Different Strokes cross over, but nothing worked. The show was canceled after just 2 seasons, forever remembered as the sitcom that was famous for failing. Hello, Larry was a show about a family trying to make it in a new town. Our next show had a similar theme, but with a much quirkier, down-home feel that made it a short-lived but memorable gem. 17. The Torkelsons.
Do you want to go to the dance or what?
Last bus. Pulling away from the bus stop. No more buses. Walking home.
This early 90s show had all the charm and feel of an 80s classic. The Torkelsons was about a single mom named Millicent Torkelson raising her 5 kids in rural Oklahoma during tough financial times. To make ends meet, she takes in a boarder, a man named Wesley Hodges, who moves into the family's spare room. The show was told from the perspective of the oldest daughter, Dorothy Jane, a dreamy, intelligent girl who was always quoting classic literature. The show was praised for its warmth, its unique voice, and its wonderful performances, especially from the young Olivia Burnett as Dorothy Jane, but it struggled to find a big audience. So, after the first season, the producers made a drastic change. They completely retooled the show. They moved the family from Oklahoma to Seattle, got rid of 2 of the kids, and had Millicent marry the boarder. They even changed the name of the show to Almost Home. It was a huge change designed to save the series. Unfortunately, it didn't work, and the show was canceled after its 2nd season. But for those who remember it, The Torkelsons was a sweet, funny, and beautifully written show about family. The Torkelsons had to share their home with a stranger. The characters on our next show were also roommates, but their living situation was a little more chaotic, thanks to a former pro basketball player. 18. Hangin' with Mr. Cooper.
Yo, Coop. Heard you smashed Vanessa's Christmas gift.
Was it on Good Morning America?
Jumping into the early 90s, but with a classic 80s feel, we find Hangin' with Mr. Cooper. The show starred comedian Mark Curry as Mark Cooper, a former NBA player who moves back to his hometown of Oakland, California, to work as a substitute teacher and gym coach at his old high school. In the first season, the premise was simple. Mark was roommates with 2 women, his childhood friend Robin, and a witty music teacher named Vanessa. The comedy came from their fun, friendly, and sometimes chaotic life together. But after the first season, the show went through a major overhaul. The thing nobody tells you is that the network wanted to make it more of a family show. So Robin was written out, and Vanessa's cousin, played by a young Raven Simone, moved in. The setting also shifted from being just about the roommates to focusing more on Mark's job at the school and his life with his new, younger housemate. The show was a key part of ABC's popular TGIF lineup and ran for 5 seasons. It was a fun, easygoing show with a great lead character that many people remember fondly from that era of Friday night TV. Mr. Cooper was a teacher looking after kids. Our next show was about a kid who desperately needed looking after, an orphan whose colorful style and positive attitude won the hearts of millions. 19. Punky Brewster.
You hungry?
Depends.
On what?
Why asking?
I'm just asking.
How come?
I'm curious.
How come?
Because I am.
How come?
With her mismatched sneakers, her colorful clothes, and her pigtails, Punky Brewster was an 80s icon. The show was about a bright, funny little girl who is abandoned by her mother. She and her puppy, Brandon, are discovered squatting in an empty apartment in a Chicago building. The building is managed by a grumpy but kind-hearted old photographer named Henry Warnemont. Henry ends up taking Punky in and eventually becomes her foster father. The show was a huge hit with kids. Punky's catchphrase, "Punky Power," was everywhere. What many overlooked is that the show, while being a comedy, dealt with some pretty serious issues. One of the most famous and frankly terrifying, very special episodes involved one of Punky's friends getting trapped in an old abandoned refrigerator during a game of hide and seek. The episode was so impactful that it taught a whole generation of kids about the dangers of playing in such places. The young actress, Soleil Moon Frye, was perfect in the role, bringing a mix of spunk and vulnerability that made Punky a character you couldn't help but love. Punky was a unique kid who found a new family. But what if the new kid in the family wasn't just unique, but wasn't even human? Our final show features one of the strangest and most unforgettable premises in sitcom history. 20. Small Wonder.
My name is Vicky. Pleased to meet you.
With the child.
We have saved the weirdest for last. The sitcom Small Wonder was about a robotics engineer named Ted Lawson who creates a robot that looks like a 10-year-old girl. He brings the robot, named Vicky, or Vicky for short, home to live with his family to see if she can adapt to a normal family environment. He tells everyone, including his nosy neighbors, that Vicky is their adopted daughter. The comedy came from Vicky's literal interpretation of everything, her robotic monotone voice, and her superhuman strength, all of which the family had to constantly explain away. To put it mildly, this show was bizarre. The actress who played Vicky, Tiffany Brissett, had to deliver all of her lines in a flat voice and move with stiff, robotic motions. It was a performance that was both impressive and a little bit creepy. Many people are crazy about this show for its pure, campy weirdness. The nosy neighbors, the Brindles, were always trying to figure out what was so strange about Vicky, leading to all sorts of silly situations. The show was never a critical darling, but it was produced for first-run syndication and ran for 4 seasons, becoming a cult classic for anyone who grew up with this truly one-of-a-kind robot girl.